Hi guys, welcome back to Switchback F1. In this video, we're going to be looking at if George Russell can win the World Drivers' Championship. Of course, the main protagonists, we've got four contenders. George himself in fourth, we've got Max in third, Oscar in second, and only leading by 1 point after the Mexican Grand Prix last week, we've got Lando Norris currently leading the championship. So what's the point difference between them? We've got 1 point, as mentioned, between Lando and Oscar, 36 points between Max and Lando, and we have 99 points between Lando and Mr. Russell himself. We've got the sprint race and main race next weekend at Brazil. Following that, we've got the Las Vegas Grand Prix, the Qatar Grand Prix and sprint, and then finally the finale at Abu Dhabi. I believe that obviously Abu Dhabi is probably going to favour the McLarens, whereas Brazil, we know how good Max can be, especially if it rains. The other races I think are potentially up for grabs, but I do feel that Qatar could be a McLaren track as well. So you have to say, for the first 16 rounds, it looked like Oscar was the one maximising weekends, keeping his head and being ultimately the more consistent driver out of the two McLaren drivers. Mistakes for Lando in qualifying and in races such as Canada made it feel there was Oscar's championship to lose. I'm a Lando fan and actually attended the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort, witnessing firsthand his engine failure that took him out of the race, and in the closing stages, I was gutted and remember saying at the time to my dad, Oscar's definitely going to win the championship, as his form seemed to never waver and the two drivers are so closely matched that Lando would never make up the 32-point deficit to his teammate. And if the racing gods were listening, they were looking down on us, and Oscar's form in the last 4 race weekends has fallen off a cliff. Granted, he was close in Monza, but following that weekend, he had a string of poor results after crashing out in Baku, P4 in Singapore, P5 in Austin after taking himself and Lando out of the sprint race with his switchback that was never on, and P5 in Mexico last time out with his teammate Lando 40 seconds up the road and 30 seconds ahead of P2 with the largest winning margin of the season. It's fair to say Lando's hit his stride just at the right time, and Oscar seems more and more lost and confused on his slump in form. If Lando keeps his race-by-race approach and head down, it's surely got to be enough to hold off Max and keep Oscar behind for the rest of the season. So when it comes to the 4 drivers, we can look at current form. I've done this over the last 6 races, including the Austin Sprint, and then also taken out the Austin Sprint to show representative over the main races. So for Lando's average finishing position over the last 6 races, including the Austin Sprint, he's been averaging a P5.8. For context, I've been calling a DNF P20, so you can work out your averages yourselves. In Lando's average finishing position over the last 5 races, excluding the Austin Sprint, he has been averaging a P3, which is much better reading. In regards to the championship, he really has to just stay ahead of Piastri. So I've put him as winning Abu Dhabi. He was very dominant there last year. I've got him at 3rd, for example, at the sprint, 2nd in Brazil, 4th in Las Vegas, and I've also got him in 3rd for the sprint race at Qatar, 3rd at Qatar, and as I said, obviously winning in Abu Dhabi. So overall, I'm not putting it as the most dominant peak of forms, and I think this is very realistic of what could potentially happen. In regards to Oscar's chances, well, current form is not looking so pretty. Currently, Oscar is averaging a finishing position of 9.5 if you include the Austin Sprint race. And for the main race, if you take out the Austin Sprint, he's averaging a P7.4, which obviously is not great. And when you look at the averages between Oscar and Lando at the moment, a P3 and a P7.4 is definitely too much to overcome if he carries on this slump that he's currently in. And it would be miles behind, potentially even lose out to Max. Now, in regards to the championship, it's a very similar story to Lando. He needs to stay ahead of his teammate overall, but to win the championship, as long as he stays in the top 4 and wins one race, that's all he has to do to potentially win the championship. Now, when it comes to Max, this is the taller order, but also probably the most interesting of the 4 drivers when it comes to championship contention. Max's form is the best out of the 4 of them. His average finishing position is 1.5, including the sprint, and without the sprint, 1.6. Basically, Max is either winning or he's coming second. So he really is on top form and really shows why he has been a 4-time world champion. In regards to race results, as Max has said himself in interviews, he needs to be almost perfect to have a chance at winning the title if things stay as they are currently. I have put him not winning the Las Vegas Grand Prix in this table due to the fact that Mercedes was so good last year and the year before that at that track. So just for a bit of interest, I thought I'd add that in there. But every other race I've said he's had to win. And really in regards to Oscar and Lando, his closest rivals for the championship, they cannot have podiums at every race. He needs to have a couple of races where they're finishing outside of that podium for him to have a chance. For example, at Qatar, in this scenario, I put them finishing 4th and 5th respectively. If that happens, then Max can win the championship, but really it also comes down to either McLaren driver not winning another race this season. Not so important for the sprint, obviously, but for actual full races, they cannot win another one for him to have a chance if they don't DNF another race. Now, what we all came here for. George is on current form that is beyond incredible this season considering the car they've had. George's average finishing position of the last 6 races, including the Austin Sprint, is 3.8, and he's the only driver where his finishing position goes slightly down if you take out the Austin Sprint of 4.16. Essentially, he's averaging a P4 over the last 5 or 6 race weekends. What that looks like in regards to form, however, is that he needs to win every single race and sprint to have a chance at the title. Now, what I've also put in here, you'll notice for the sprints, is for Qatar and Brazil sprint races, I put Lando and Oscar as 0 points. Now, what I'm assuming here in this scenario is that either Oscar or Lando or both of them are going to repeat what happened in Austin, and they're going to take each other out in the first corner, battling for position, allowing George to get through and win the race. And Max can't be scoring more than a few podiums throughout that season. And you can see the poor run of form that all the other 3 drivers would have to have for this to come true, including obviously Lando and Oscar getting P9s and 10s, P8s, etc. at the bottom end of the points, or scoring nothing at all as per the sprints. Max can have a podium, which is funny to see really at Brazil. I've always put Brazil as one of Max's strongest races, so I don't see him getting anything less than a podium really at either the sprint or the main race next week. So you may be asking, Luke, you've gone through all the numbers, you've gone through all the data. Who do you think is going to win the championship? And to me, there should be one clear and obvious answer. It's clearly George Russell. Now, you may be thinking, the numbers do not add up to George being champion, and you'd be correct. He has an outsider chance if you look at just the pure numbers. But what you're forgetting is his teammate is Kimi Antonelli. Now, Kimi has already shown he has the talent to take Max out of races this season, going straight into the side of him instead of going around the corner like a normal driver would. And he has learnt this from George. See, he's been a Mercedes junior driver for years now, and he's seen George battle with the best, putting holes in side pods, crashing into people, and even clipping walls himself. And when he saw him put a hole in Max's side pod at Azerbaijan 2 years ago, he thought, this is my inspiration to move forward. And that's exactly why he harpooned Max. Now, what George is going to do, he's trained him up now. This is the start of everything. He's going to obviously learn to dive bomb and harpoon all three drivers at the same time. Now that might sound impossible, but if anyone can do it, it's a protege of Mr. Russell himself. He knows how to crash people out, battle, and whatever happens, blame the other driver. And Antonelli is going to take the mantle and take it with full force for the end of the season. So you could say in a way, it's Antonelli winning this title for George, not George winning the title by himself. And that's why he will be world champion. Now, in all seriousness, obviously the title is very, very close. And as much as it would be absolute cinema if George Russell could win the title, I do believe my pick is Lando Norris. Lando's been on top form in the last few races, and Piastri seems to be lost and confused of where the pace has gone. You could say Piastri has turned into a bit of a flaky pastry, as his name would seem. So as mentioned earlier in the video, Max's current form is essentially either winning or coming second in every race. If he keeps that up and splits them down the middle for the rest of the season, he will total 101 points. Lando, on the other hand, was averaging a P3 if you take out the sprint races, because that wasn't really his fault. So if you look at that result, Lando's actually going to average out at 72 points for the end of the season. So even if they keep on their current form and trajectory, Lando will win the title by 7 points, with him finishing P3 every race and Max finishing P1 or 2 every single time. So yeah, because of that, I do believe Lando is going to be champion. I think that Max and George possibly have too much to do at this part of the season, and it'll be really, really exciting if they all close up to Abu Dhabi and that's where it's decided. I hope you enjoyed the season, and I hope you enjoy more races and videos from myself. See you then.